Somebody's dropping their kid off at college. Oh, the big day. Is this the first
Yes,
year
sir.
of college?
Yes, sir, it is. We're headed to Oklahoma University to drop her off.
Oh.
Take the
That is
rest of the day.
that is awesome, man.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, congrats. So Steve, we'll get started here in a couple minutes. Everybody's just filtering in after the weekend, so I like to give them another minute or two in the morning, and then we'll get cranking. Sound good, sir?
Sounds good, sir.
Awesome. Hey, Roosevelt, where you're living right now, looks like you don't need a job, man. That place is, I don't know how you do it. That's the best. That's the best spot I've seen. Speaking of LinkedIn, I'll put mine up there too. So Steve and I just put our LinkedIn's into the chat, guys, if you want to grab those while they're up there. Roosevelt, hopefully your solar panels go smoother than mine. Took like 3 months from start to finish between all the headaches they had to deal with, which caused me to miss out on SREX when those were a thing by like a month. That was painful.
I self-installed mine at our old house.
Oh, nice. Yeah,
It was a,
there's no
it was
way
a
I was
tiny
doing
house.
that.
It was a tiny house. It was only 8 of them.
Oh, yeah, that's easy. Yeah, it's yeah, for
I only
me,
got shocked a few times.
I've got a yeah, 2 floors and a decently pitched roof, and then it's on top of a hill too. So when you're on the roof, you feel like you're standing on top of a mountain. It's like not happening. So okay, we're about a minute after the hour. Steve, if you want a camera up, and we'll get started if that sounds good. Excellent. There you are. So I'll get you
I was
started.
born ready. Let's do it.
Oh, bam! I love it. So hey, today we're joined by Stephen Weston, an Air Force vet who's dedicated over 22 years of service before transitioning into corporate America. He's built an impressive career at Verizon, where he currently serves as marketing manager and chief of staff of marketing communications. He's not only driven operational excellence and managed multi-million-dollar budgets, but he's also become a trusted advisor to executives, a champion for veterans, and even a brand ambassador representing Verizon nationwide. Stephen has been recognized as a GI Jobs and military friendly veteran champion of the year in corporate America, and continues to give back through his leadership with the VFW and Milk Route. His journey reflects resilience, adaptability, and a deep commitment to helping fellow veterans find success after service. I'm excited to learn from your experiences here today, Steve. Did I manage to get everything in there? I miss any big wickets?
Oh, I'm sure we can flush out anything that was missed. I'm just excited to come talk to this group. It hasn't been that long since I transitioned myself, and I know what that feels like, and the fear and the of the unknown, what you're about to get into, what you're doing. You're probably reaching out, trying to figure out networking and better ways to do things to make yourself more marketable. So I'm really glad to be here and to answer questions and provide feedback if needed, or whatever anybody, what's everybody else stressing about,
Everything. So, I mean, start right there. So what was the hardest part for you after leaving the service?
Sure. So a little background on me from my Air Force career. I spent 9 years in air transportation and logistics. So I was an air transportation specialist, specifically attached to the contingency response wing at McGuire. I spent my first 6 years basically opening almost every bear base in the Middle East that you've probably ever heard of, to include Kandahar. And then I transitioned about 2009 into Air Force recruiting service. And I did that for the remainder of my career until I retired in 2022. I served as an enlisted accessions recruiter, a MEPS liaison, senior MEPS liaison, and recruiting flight chief during that time. In 2022, I ended up going through the Hiring Our Heroes Cohort 2 program for the corporate fellowship. And it was during that time where I networked early on and got into contact with the Verizon military recruiting team. And that military recruiting team just kind of hit it off that they really had their stuff together, the way that their program was put together, the details of how well they worked with me on the outside, answering emails, questions. And then what really kind of sold it for me was every single fellowship that the company advertises for anybody that's looking for a traditional SkillBridge CSP or a Hiring Our Heroes fellowship has allocated headcount attached to every single one of them. So what that meant was, if you did a SkillBridge with them, they are actually holding on to the headcount and can directly hire you full-time at the end if that hiring manager feels that you're a great fit based on how you performed during your SkillBridge. So I went through that process. I came on board Verizon as a fellow for 11 weeks in talent acquisition, performed optimally, and then I was brought on board full-time to be the SkillBridge recruiter for Verizon. And so I spent about 2 years actually being the guy that recruited SkillBridge fellows afterwards. And then about a year ago, I ended up parlaying into this chief of staff role. But like some of the things that that really, were challenging for me were, in the military, we get used to a very specific expectation when it comes to like communication, time management, things of that nature. And so one of the things that I had a hard time with was in the military, we're, especially when I was in recruiting service, we're on the cell phone never comes off. Like you're on call 24/7. If I had a kid at MEPS and it was midnight and they were having an issue, I got a phone call at midnight. If it was 3 a.m, it was 3 a.m, whether it was a Sunday, a Tuesday, or a Friday. Emails, leadership expected an answer by the end of the day. Even if the answer was, I don't have an answer, but I'm going to get you one by this time or day, that was pretty solid. If you got an email from a leader in the morning, you were going to at least follow up before the end of the day to let them know where you're at. In the civilian world, they operate a little different. You never know what somebody's working on. You don't know what their priorities are. And you could send somebody an email and it might be at the top of your priority list, but it might be at the bottom of theirs. You might not get an answer for 3 or 4 days. Phone calls, it depends on what you do. Like some civilian careers are very on the clock. Like you have to have a phone attached to you at all times. Others are not. You just work your Monday through Friday, 8 to 4 or 8 or 9 to 5, and they don't mess with you on the weekends. So it took a little getting used to that dynamic. If I send out a message, I need to really see like, where is this at in their priority level, which, basically what I figured out was relationship building became key, because the better I got to know my peers, then I got to understand what their priorities and what motivates them and what keeps them up at night, what those things were, so that when I did send out a message, I could send out clear expectations on when I expected an answer back, but I could hold myself accountable to be like, all right, I need to give them a couple days grace because I know they're working on these other things. So it was kind of something that I had to get used to.
Yeah. So, I mean, how did that mess with you mentally? Because, I mean, we're used to that quick, especially as recruiters. I mean, sense urgency is always, I always higher than
Absolutely.
anybody else. So, I mean,
Absolutely.
how frustrating was that to get used to? Because I know, like an experience I had that I learned from was I had a human resources business partner. I needed an answer because I'm trying to set pay for somebody or something, and I wasn't getting an
Yeah.
answer back for like a week. And I said to somebody, I was like, I'm just going to send an email and then put the read receipt on it. And the first thing I got was no, because on the military side, that's a nice little nudge saying it's going to move up. I mean, did you have any of those experiences you learned from?
Yeah, I still to this day haven't used read receipts, but what I did do was something similar to that, where after like a few days, I tagged their boss in a CC. Like in the military, you if you're a E5 and you
Mhm.
need something from another E5 and they're not answering you, you tag the E6 on there, their boss, right? And usually stuff will get done at that point, right? In the civilian
Mhm.
world, that's like dropping a nuclear bomb. Like if you're throwing somebody's boss in an email, you better be damn sure that that's like a hill you want to die on, and that's a relationship you want to burn. So going back to the relationship building, that's why it's very important when you get into any employer. Get to know who your peers are, get to know who your coworkers are, like for real, like talk to them, get to know them, find out what makes them tick. You might find out you have a lot of things in common. What that'll do is, number one, they'll be more comfortable with you. They'll be more comfortable communicating with you. And then when you do need those things, they're going to be more willing to move you a little closer to the top of the list because you've shown that you value them and they know that. So even if they are busy, they may say, hey, I'm busy, but you know what? Let me block off some time tomorrow and let's knock that out together. Versus before, if you never took the time to get to know them, they'll make you wait 4 or 5 days until they're done doing what they want to do. So relationship building kind of goes hand in hand with that.
Did you have any like big mistakes or big wins that were unexpected with that stuff?
Uh, Never had any big mistakes. I mean, I only really attempted that that one time. And my mentor at the time was Michael McCoy, who leads the Verizon military programs. And he himself is a captain in the National Guard, but he's been in corporate America for a while, 7, 8, 9 years. So he just kind of pulled me off to the side and was like, "Hey, man, I know how things are in the military. Trust me, I understand. I run a company myself. When I'm on drill." But like this is kind of a better way to go about doing this if you want results. And so very quickly, my mentor just kind of let me know some key things to do to avoid that, which is what I just shared. And after that, I didn't really have any problems. But I think a lot of that is because for those who have followed me the last 3 years, I built a solid network in a very short amount of time. I really took that feedback to heart and really made it a priority for me to get to learn not only the people in my immediate section, like for example, if you're working, I don't know, let's say you're a CE guy, and you're an electrician. I'm not just getting to know the electricians. I'm getting to know everybody else around too. Like I'm getting to know the air trans guys, the load masters, the cops, I started building my network across the entire company. And so then when I actually needed things, I had a lot of people that I could lean on because I knew so many people across the organization, which is what kind of helped land me the current position that I'm in was that networking. People were like, "Hey, I didn't know if you heard, but this position just dropped." These are people who would have never told me had I never extended those olive branches very early on.
So do you think that, your Air Force recruiting experience helped with that leadership and connection aspect?
Oh yes, absolutely. Um, not just the Air Force recruiting experience, but like just the military experience in general. We are very good at time and task management. We are very good at prioritizing things. Once we get our foot in the door, those are no brainers. But a lot of the things that they don't really talk about, and for example, when you go through like TAP, Transition Assistance Program, is that relationship building piece. In the civilian world, there's a rank structure, but it ain't like it is in the military. You can't just walk up and tell somebody, "Hey, you're going to do this." They'll tell you what you can do with that. So you have to learn to communicate in a different way. And that's what I keep wrapping back around to that relationship building. You need to learn these people, who they are, what makes them tick. And then it makes it so much easier to communicate with them, especially if you're having a hard time or you need help or you don't understand something. These people are going to be more willing to take you to the side and help you out and explain things and give you the context that you need to be successful.
Yeah, it's a fact. I mean, just like anything else. But I mean, so what do you think? If you had to pick one skill that you picked up in the military that's helped you the most on the corporate side of things, what would that be?
The same sense of urgency that I struggled with. The sense of urgency, it can be a hindrance, but it's also a blessing. Once you get it under control and you learn how to use it to your advantage. Like for example, my current role now, he had 18 months of work lined up for me. I think I knocked it out in 9 months. So my task and time management allowed me to be super productive, more productive than many of my peers. And that's not just unique to me, that's unique to our community, which is why, on average, military veterans out promote their civilian peers because we have all that time and task management training and that discipline and all those other things. And when we finally get the opportunity and the right mentorship and we learn how to use it to our advantage, we can become very powerful. We can get a lot of stuff done. And in the civilian world, there's a lot of people that, in the military, it's like kind of a given. You're going to climb the ladder. You spend enough time and grade and time in service and you're doing the right things and you check the right boxes, you're going to get promoted. In the civilian world, there's a lot of people that are very happy where they are. They don't have any desire to promote, and they'll kind of sit in the same spot for very long periods of time. There's other people that they just want to come in and do the bare minimum, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's what they get paid to do. But if you're somebody coming out and you're wanting to climb and be successful and grow, if you're a solid performer, you're going to get those opportunities.
So, I mean, what's your advice on that whole taking a step back to get your foot in the door? I'm guessing you're a believer.
Yeah, I did it myself. I was a flight chief, a regional recruiting manager, and I didn't get a regional recruiting management job in the civilian world. I took a step back and was a regular recruiter, like going back to being an E5 again in my first tour. But I was okay with doing that. And the reason why I was okay with doing that was because I wanted to understand the business. I wanted to understand the why behind what the team does. I wanted to understand the big picture and what my role played in that picture. I wanted to learn more about the business so that I could be a better recruiter. By being a better recruiter, I eventually could become a better leader because now I understand the business. I don't just understand recruiting, I understand what we're recruiting, why we're recruiting it, and how that fits into the puzzle. And then eventually I started climbing. But the funny thing is once I finally figured all that stuff out, I ended up being a great fit for another position that was even a bigger step, and so just by doing that and learning a lot of things and building those relationships across the different parts of the business. For example, Verizon's a Fortune 30 company. We have over 100,000 employees. We have 6,000 veterans in our company alone. We have like 5 business groups. Each business group you could look at like a wing. So instead of just building relationships in my own wing, I built relationships across all 5 wings, and then I learned what those wings do and what they do fits into the piece of the puzzle. So when I started interviewing for jobs as a chief of staff, when they asked me a lot of questions during interviews, I was able to say, I know what this organization does. It does 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and this is how I could help make that better. If I hadn't have done all that relationship building and research and learned and took that step back and got the whole picture, I don't know if I would have interviewed as well.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I didn't think about it till now, but I did similar on the Air Force side, because on the guard side, it was if I didn't have a position, I might know somebody at a wing because I was building those relationships. Say, hey, if you go over here, you'll get exactly what you want, and then made it happen. That definitely helped me and a lot of people out in the long run. So on the other side of things, so how did you learn to speak corporate? How long of a struggle was that going from F-bomb this to, well, sir, that may not be the proper approach. I mean, how was that struggle?
Well, fortunately, I had 13 years of Air Force recruiting that weeded that out of me.
Mhm.
I can turn it off and turn it on when I need to. But there is some corporate speak to get used to, like leaning in. What does leaning in mean? Leaning in means getting ahead of the curve, planning in advance. We have similar terms in the military. It's just we call it something different. But just learning those little caveat type terms. Um, I think Demario has a question. Does is that Demario got a question? What does working for Verizon look like outside of sales and installation teams? What does the work-life balance look like? What trainings do I need to look into to make myself more presentable for Verizon? Let's cut that into a couple of pieces. So, well, first of all, when most people think of Verizon, they think of sales and installation teams because that's all they ever see. They don't realize we're a gigantic organization. We have supply chain, we have AI, we have robotics, we have drone technology, we have all kinds of stuff. We're not just cell phones and stores, So to answer the second question, what does the work life balance look like? Well, I'll tell you, I've been at the company 3 years now, and I've only had to answer my cell phone one time after 5 o'clock in 3 years. So
Solid.
the work life balance here is pretty good. Now that also depends on what you do. Sales is a different animal. Installations, HVAC technicians, cell site engineers are a different animal. Corporate HR, that's a different animal. So you're going to probably have different opinions from different people depending on what specifically in the business they're doing. But generally, I've been in mostly HR and marketing and sales, and I mean, they're pretty cool here. I mean, if as long as you set your boundaries, reasonable boundaries, they're pretty good about honoring those boundaries. As far as trainings, I really don't know how to answer that because I'm sure every single person in this room has a completely different career field background, a completely different set of skills, hard and soft. Um, the best bet to know what you need to do is to look at those job descriptions. The job descriptions are the answers to the test. They're going to specifically, no shit, tell you, pardon my French, what they're looking for. And if you don't know what those things in the job description are, the first thing that I would be doing is getting on Google and learning what they are. For example, a lot of our folks that work in like the finance division, we're talking like accounting, risk management, things of that nature, like down in our Lake Mary office, they use the SOX method. Does anybody in here know what SOX is?
No, not that one. That's not. Please tell us.
You'll see this in a job description for those types of jobs. SOX, SOX, is Sarbanes-Oxley. If you don't know what the Sarbanes-Oxley process is, you're probably not going to be a good fit for that position if you can't, articulate what it is. So, like for example, if you're looking for a risk management role in a finance department and you don't know what SOX is, go look it up. Take a free LinkedIn learning course and learn what Sarbanes-Oxley is, and then you'll be able to draw the conclusion or draw the similarities between processes you did in the military to what this process is and how you did similar things in your previous roles.
Good. So, hey guys, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to throw the hand up and just ask them straight up. But so I mean, like in your case, I imagine you've seen some resumes and dealt with a lot of guys going through, especially on the SkillBridge side. So, I mean, what advice do you give to these folks who are struggling to market their skills to civilian employers? Is there anything in particular you've seen, like, hey, address it like this or show it like this, so that way they can understand? Oh, I get it. The value.
Sure. So, is everybody in? I'm assuming everybody in here is from all different branches. Is that correct?
Oh yeah,
Or is
everywhere.
everybody
Yep.
in here Air Force? Okay, so everybody's different. So
All over.
my Air Force folks will probably be able to relate with the STAR method because that's how we write our EPR bullets. That's how we write our performance reports. That's how we write our award packages. For the folks outside of that, I know we all, the other services, I know they also do similar type things. But situation, task, action, result. When you're sitting back and you're looking at the things that you've done in the service, like for example, I was a senior NCO, and you'll see senior NCO bullets on a resume. I'll say I led 900 people across 3 states and $400 billion worth of equipment. Let's tear that apart. Did you specifically yourself write the performance evaluations for all 400 or 500 people that you just listed out? No. Or did you only really personally lead 10 people, and those 10 people led the other however many people fall under that? And this is the kind of the trap that a lot of folks in the service get into, is we get so used to like, yeah, Airman First Class Weston loaded 952 tons of cargo on 473 aircraft and made sure that this mission was done successfully. Yes, Airman Weston did do that, but was the impact really, was that really the impact? Is that, you don't fluff the details. Give them the baby. Give them specifically what you did. So for example, like I had to hire folks in like ethical hacking, so I'm looking for folks with like C++. I'm looking for people with like ethical hacking certifications, things like that. And I would have a job opening for somebody, let's just say for like an analyst on one of my red blue teams, and I'd get like a separating captain who is like a 25 November or 25 uniform from the Army would, for as an example, would apply to that role and say they're a great fit. But then when we get to the interview, one of the first things I'd ask them is, how many years of hands-on experience do you have with certification 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 that we asked for in the job description? They'd be like, oh, I was never hands-on with it. I just was in charge of the people who did. And that's another example, is like, you really need to read the job description. Like they're looking for somebody that, no kidding, has the hands-on experience doing those things, not the person who was the figurehead. If you want a strategic role, then you need to look at more strategic type positions. If you want a tactical role and you have tactical experience, then you're probably going to be good fit for a job description looking for tactical things. So for example, in that case, my E5s, E6s, and E7s that actually were hands-on with that stuff for 6, 7, 8, 9 years, those were the ones that won out those roles because they actually had legitimate hands-on IAT level 2 experience and things like that. So that doesn't mean that the captain getting out of the Army is not just like, he's not a good fit for anything. It's just not for that specific role. Now, if we were looking for somebody that's got more like NIST experience, NIST at the strategic level, strategic planning, I need somebody who has experience leading like an information technology team, then that would be more of a role I would expect somebody like that to apply to. So go back, read the job description. It'll tell you need to correlate those no kidding hands-on experiences to what they're looking for. Don't get that fluff out of the way. The other thing is, with all that fluff, you have to understand that only 1% of the current U.S. population is on active duty. Only 7%, give or take a little bit, has ever served. And that's from like World War II to now. So if you utilize that kind of those same statistics, what are the odds that most recruiters out there have zero military experience and are not going to be able to understand what your bullets are unless you kind of break it down and get very specific? They need to be able to read your bullet and understand the value that you provide. And it's very hard to do that when we have these huge inflated bullets that aren't really an accurate description of what folks are doing.
Makes sense. Jesse, go ahead, sir.
Hey, what's up, Weston?
What's up, Jesse?
Hey, man. I was a port doc too. I was stationed with
word
wire. Yeah. At the 305th, not at the CR. It wasn't cool enough.
Yeah, is Bob Miles still over there?
Uh, Let me think. Mr. Miles.
I know,
Yeah.
Chief Nolan just retired like a year ago, but
Yeah. Yeah. He moved over to the CR afterwards. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Chief Nolan and I
Yeah,
were on the
man.
CR together back when he was a staff sergeant.
Who?
Chief Nolan.
Nolan?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he was there for a while at
Yeah.
the
What's your
305th,
question?
I mean. Yeah, man. So earlier you were saying that like, the recruiters are kind of giving you the answers to the test. So if they're looking for A, B, and C, you better have A, B, and C. That's what you're getting at, right?
So, like when you're looking at
Um,
a job description, they kind of formulate it depending on the company. They'll word it a little different. But like for if you're looking at
mhm,
Verizon jobs, for example, there'll be a section which is like a brief summary of what the position is and what kind of some skills that they're going to be expecting that person to do and know. Those will be at the top, right? I
okay.
would focus in on those because when you get hired, those are the tasks they're specifically going to be hiring you to perform. And if you already have experience performing those types of tasks, those are things you should be fleshing out in your resume specifically. Then below that, what you'll have is like the hard requirements. So, like the need to have, the basic requirements, like they'll either call it need to have or like basic requirements, right? Those are not
Hmm.
negotiable. Those are must haves. You either have them or you
Okay.
don't. Then under that, usually you'll have like nice to haves, right? Like preferred qualifications, or even better if you have it, they'll label it something similar like that. Those are not mandatory. If they got six things listed there, you don't even need to have any of those six things. Now, the more of them you have, the stronger of a candidate you'll be. But for example, you'll see some roles like the basic qualifications will say 3 years experience, hands on doing whatever, and then bachelor's degree, and then must live in, I don't know, New Jersey. Those are not negotiable. And then in the even betters, it'll say like master's degree, this certification, that certification, you know, maybe you only have one of those. Well, then you can apply for that role. You're qualified to apply for that role. Now, where you fall in the competition of everybody else that applies, you won't know. But what I would say is make sure that the basic quals you absolutely have, the preferreds, try as many of them as you can get to. If you have at least half of them, you're going to be a solid candidate. Even if you don't get it, you're still a solid candidate. And then
Hmm.
also have the resume focus in, like I said before, on those summarized items towards the top, like explaining what that position does.
Oh yeah, like be specific about those parts, like
Be
exactly.
specific, right?
Word for word.
Yeah,
Be specific.
word. All right, man.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Cool. Go ahead,
Yeah.
AJ.
Hey, Steve. Thanks for coming and talking.
Hi, AJ.
So in your experience, either firsthand or secondhand, how open have you seen Verizon be with individuals who are like pivoting, like somebody who is, let's say, like a special warfare type career field where the skills are very like hyper specific, and
Sure.
trying to pivot in and break into something within Verizon? How open have you? How
So you're
open?
talking about being like an operator, like a TAC-P, and then or a combat controller, and then trying to
Something like.
jump into something else.
Yeah, well, personally, I'm EOD, so I'm
Tracking.
viewing through the EOD lens. But how receptive are they, or have they been, in your experience, to people who are like breaking in?
Not just Verizon, but most companies are very receptive. But it goes back to what we were just talking about with the previous question was how well are you marketing your actual hard and soft skills? Do you even know what your hard and soft skills are? And that's a rhetorical question. I'm not asking you to answer that. But what I'm saying is sit down with a piece of paper, draw a T, do a couple sheets of paper, draw a T. What are my hard skills? What are my soft skills? List them out. What are they? Do you know them all? You might realize you have more skills than you thought. We go through a lot of training in the military, and it's a lot of things we just take for granted. We just do.
Right.
But we had to be trained to learn those things. Like it doesn't just, you didn't just one day wake up and start doing these things, right? Years and years of molding and mentorship and practice. Another thing, what do you want to do when you get out and what don't you want to do when you get out? Sometimes it's easier to figure out what you don't want to do versus trying to figure out what you do want to do. You know, those are two things that I actually personally did myself. You know, I sat down and listed all my skills out. And when you're looking at job descriptions, you should be looking at them through the lens of your hard and soft skills, not what job you did in the military.
Gotcha.
Now, it helps if you're going to be like, for example, you're going to go into law enforcement and be EOD for them, then of course, EOD is going to be super relevant for that, right? But if you're trying to just go and be an operations manager somewhere, or you're trying to go get into B2B sales and you want to start building your portfolio out, or you want to go get into IT and switch gears to go through a boot camp. At the end of the day, everything comes down to what are your hard and soft skills, and do you have the hard and soft skills the job description is looking for?
Right.
If
And
you
then
can
just communicating
articulate,
that
absolutely,
on the
absolutely.
resume.
I can't tell you how many soft guys are killing it in the corporate world in many different employers because that training, right? The sense of urgency, the time and task management, the just getting stuff done, right? Like they're just so good at that once they figure that little piece out, they break into corporate America and they just boom, like they're all over it. The Honor Foundation is a good example of that. They specifically help transitioning soft folks in that community into corporate America.
Awesome. And then second follow-up, how much time do you have on that chin piece there?
It's actually shorter than it used to be. It was about an inch or two longer about a week ago. I just trimmed it. Usually I put I put stuff in it or whatever, and it's a little
Beads?
more not as
Braided?
stringy, but and it's also not. I have curly hair, so if I use a straightener, it's about an inch longer than this.
Awesome.
But yeah, it took me about a year and a half to get it going. I started growing it immediately as soon as I was on terminal leave. But
As we
yeah,
do.
it's part of my new identity, man. Every picture you see me in now has a hat and a beard, so that's how most people recognize me.
Different,
Right on.
different uniform. So, hey, Kenneth, go ahead, sir.
Good morning, Steve. First, I want to say thank you so much for your time
Yes, sir.
and your insight on these topics. So I'm getting ready to retire out of the Air Force as well. So IT guy, right? A lot of progressive leadership, that type of stuff, and retiring as an E8. So done a lot of those senior level roles. So I understand exactly what you were talking about in regards to hey, if you haven't done the technical work, don't go for the technical roles, or kind of stay away from a little bit. But in the IT side of the house, how do we get around the aspect of pretty much what's happening is a lot of the job postings that are coming out are saying, hey, I want 12 to 13 years experience doing this specific system, right? Understanding that technical or that manager or that director or whatnot, whatever that role is, right? They're not going to be touching these things, but I still want, 6 to 12 years of experience in X, Y, Z. Because every job post and everything that I'm applying to, I'm like, hey, I can do all of these things. I make my resume read just as that. Hey, I can do it all.
Yeah.
Know somebody in the company, but then at the end of the day, they go, you're not a good fit because you don't have 11 years of hands-on experience with X, Y, Z, right? Because even those other roles, right? Your basic manager, they're like, hey, I'd like 4 years on Forge Rock. And I'm like, oh, okay, I can learn it and get to that point. But
Right.
I know you're not going to have me hands-on keyboard with that piece of equipment. So how do you get around that, or how do you deal with those type of things?
Well, a lot of that, I mean, if you're already in that, it might be a little late, but for those who may be a year or two out, that's where, this is where that piece about, getting a piece of paper and drawing the T and what you want to do and what you don't want to do. And then leaning in and doing those coffee chats with folks in the industry or in that employer that you want to target to ask that exact question you just asked me. If I want to do this, what do I need to do to have enough value to be seen as a top candidate for that? What do I need? They may flat out tell you, you're setting your sights a little too high. You might have to take a step or two back. For example, I ran a record-setting recruiting flight. We broke 30-year production records. We were the top recruiting squadron in the country the year that I retired, the 314th Recruiting Squadron out of New Jersey. You know, I couldn't even get a manager job or a senior manager or a director position in HR talent acquisition because I had zero corporate recruiting experience. Corporate recruiting is a whole different animal than military recruiting. There are a lot of things that are very similar, right? Like cold calling, lead management. It's for all intents and purposes a type of a sales job, but the mechanics of it, how we do it, you know, like in Air Force recruiting or Army recruiting or Marine Corps recruiting, you're recruiting for the entire service as a whole, unless you're in Guard. That's a little different. But corporate recruiting is more like Guard recruiting, where they recruit for a specific team. And not only do you recruit for that team, but you have to like have bi-weekly meetups with that executive leadership. You have to conduct presentations on the statuses and where we're going and things of that nature. It's more strategic. You know, for example, my recruiter here, she has to sit down and brief the senior vice president, which is the equivalent of a 1 or a 2-star general in the military, you know, monthly. Well, you don't do that as a recruit. I mean, I don't even know recruiters that are senior NCOs outside of a group level that even do that, you know? So, you know, thinking that you're going to walk out of as a squadron SEA and walk right into a director of recruiting position or senior manager of recruiting position in some of these companies is you're setting your sights too high. You might have to take a step back and just go in. That's why most of the recruiters that I know that are getting out, if they're getting management positions in recruiting, they're in very small companies, more regionally located. The folks that are getting hired at the bigger companies, they're like me, they're getting in as regular recruiters. They work there for like a year and then they move up, you know, once they wrap their head around the business and they learn those skills that they were missing. So in the IT world, you know, where you live, it's a very similar type thing where, you know, maybe in the IT world, you did 40% of what they want in their job. And you're like, hey, you know, I've been doing this a long time, but you might be missing that other 60% that you're not even aware of. And that's where I think coffee chats really are important because, like I said, you can reach out to people that work in that company doing exactly what you want to do and see if you can get 15, 20 minutes on their calendar for a conversation so they can tell you what you need to do, what certifications you need to learn, what verbiage are you missing. Maybe there's something else that you're not even aware of that would make you a better candidate or a stronger candidate.
Yeah, I think what I'm noticing a lot of the times from an IT perspective it's, you know, I've got my master's, I got the CISP, I've got a lot of certifications and a lot of experience in doing those things. And it's not just one step back. It's, hey, yeah, I don't even want you to be a team lead. You know, come on over here and work for 50 grand a year or 60 grand a year. And I'm like,
yeah, exactly.
You
right.
know? And it's like, that's a little, that's a little rough. That doesn't make any sense to me. So that's kind of where I'm trying to figure it out. So,
yeah, you know, it's, I know exactly what you're talking about because I've had to talk to people about that very, very often, you know, when I was a recruiter, you know, and it's, but it comes back down to exactly they are paying somebody to do a job and that job needs X, Y, and Z, and either you have it or you don't. But there may be some things, you know, like when you do coffee chats, you might be like, oh, you know what? I did do that in the military. They just call it something different in the corporate world. Let me draw that correlation for them. That way in an interview, you can say, I don't have 3 years experience or 4 years experience doing this, but I do have 4 years experience doing this, which is very similar. So like in my time as air trans, my air trans guys, they'll know gates, D gates, all that stuff, right? That's our logistics tracking system. Well, that's like a type of a SAP, you know? So like in the Army, we have GCSS, right? So like you might get into the civilian world and they're like, I need 5 years experience on this random, you know, like work day or like, you know, so whatever their named equivalent is. And you might be like, well, I don't have 4 or 5 years experience of that. but I do have 4 or 5 years experience of GCSS, which is the exact same thing. This is what the Department of Defense uses. And then be able to list why they're the same and how you were able to use that system to do what you needed to do. That at least lets them know, okay, they don't have that system. However, they have experience using SAP before, and you'll be able to speed them up real quick. The other thing, the other caveat that some people forget sometimes is the job market is a competition.
Mm-hmm.
You're not the only person applying for that role. You might not even be the only E8 in tech in the military that does what you do applying for that role. 200,000 people get out of the military every year. So break that down by quarter, break that down by cohort. There's a lot of competition out there, and that's just from the military. What about your civilian competition? You might actually be a good fit for a role, but there might be a civilian counterpart that's already working at that company that applied for the same position that actually has already been working on that team. And so when a recruiter sits down and they have 500 applicants, the first thing they're going to do when they sort through those applicants is they're going to look at who's already at the company doing that job that applied for this role. Then who's external to this company that has experience that we're looking for to do that job that applied, right? And those are going to usually be among the first people that they look at.
That's fair. Thank you.
Hey,
Sure.
Demario, go ahead.
It's a competition out there, man. You might have 10 races and win 2 of them, but you don't know who your competition is till you show up to the race,
How you doing, Steve? This is Demario. So currently getting out of the Navy as an operations specialist. My background is more of a aviation database manager, that type of thing. But because of my job in the Navy, we're kind of like a jack of all trades. So we do a lot of different things. I went on the website to careers and tried to find exactly what jobs Verizon did have to offer. And I got met with the onslaught of just different things, like 2 years plus 5 years, all of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
My question is, how do I identify specific locations for what I want to do with Verizon, or submit applications for Verizon for specific locations versus what's on there? Because what's on there is showing, like, I guess, main hubs, maybe. Because I know there's like plethoras of stores around Jacksonville area, but nothing in there said Jacksonville, Florida.
Sure. So when it comes to the store locations are basically, that's sales. That's what that's our VCG sales group. So that's your business to business sales, and your regular sales folks that's only who's going to work out of those. Verizon is structured very similar to how the military is structured. And I mean that by, in the military we have bases, right? Like we have McGuire, we have Joint Base McCord, Lewis, we have Fort Hood, we got all these different bases, right, all over the country. Well, Verizon's hubs are just like that. Our hubs are like our bases, and they're all over the United States. And some of the hubs are more specialized in one thing than another. So, for example, like in Irving, Texas, which is Dallas, Fort Worth. Please turn your mic off if you're not talking.
Yeah, somebody's got a hot mic. Yeah. Hey,
Can we get that mic turned off?
Davey's got the hot mic. I think you're good.
All right. Sorry. So, as I was saying, so our hubs are like our bases, So, like, for example, our Irving hub is a huge supply chain hub for us. So if you want to look for supply chain, there's going to be a lot more supply chain roles there. They have other roles too, but predominantly they're going to have a lot of supply chain. If you look at like our Lake Mary hub, that's more of like a finance hub for us. So you're going to find more finance roles there. If you look at like Alpharetta, which is outside of Atlanta, Georgia, you're going to find more like cyber, sales, marketing, things of that nature. If you go to Basking Ridge, where I'm at in New Jersey, that's like our Pentagon. So we have a little bit of everything at Basking Ridge, and it's also where most of the senior executive leaders sit as well.
Okay. What about Wesley Chapel?
Where's that at?
In Florida?
Nope. I think our only hubs in Florida are like Miami, Lake Mary, and Tampa. That's it.
Oh, okay. I seen somebody said Wesley Chapel. I was assuming that was, I know that's in Tampa area, but I wasn't sure if that had like a primary focus, like you were saying, with the different other locations.
Yeah. So what you'll find is like there are satellite hubs they're like really tiny, but they're very specialized. And usually the only folks that work out of those specialized hubs, the smaller ones, are like our sales, our technicians, our cell site engineers, the crews that go out, the union folks that go out and work the union type roles. The big hubs like Tampa, Lake Mary, whatever, those are like the big corporate buildings. That's where you're going to have like 2,000 people working, or 1,000 people working. Sometimes you'll see on the site, you'll see like these smaller towns will have an opening, but if you really look at those positions, they're either like some sort of a sales or some sort of a technician or, somewhere along those lines. Those are a little different. If you apply to those, like those, you ever like go and like turn your modem in after you cancel your internet, you go to like that little satellite office and you turn it in. That's kind of what those are.
Oh, okay.
The big hubs though are like the big headquarters buildings. Those are where the majority of the advertised positions are going to be at.
And my last question, I know that Verizon is very big at future proofing and all that other stuff. As far as remote jobs, because I didn't see any, or if any, remote jobs on the site for the career site. What does that look like, and how often do those open up, and what operations or function do they actually hold, other than like troubleshooting or customer service type deal?
Sure. So Verizon's kind of starting to lean away from remote type roles. It doesn't mean we don't have any, but they're like very far and few between. And most people that are getting them now, they kind of are sitting in them, so you're not going to really see them too often. The vast majority of our positions are going to be either hybrid or on site. Starting in September, we're going mandatory 3 days a week in office. So most, if any, new hires are all going to be hybrid at a minimum for the most part. The remote roles are usually like very niche, so it's, but I mean, we're actually, for our competitors in telecom, we're actually the only one that's still only doing 2 to 3 days a week in office. Most of our competitors like AT&T and T-Mobile and stuff, they're already 5 days a week in office. So for those folks that are, I get the whole remote thing, but like you got to work, man. You got to put food on the table. You can't expect everything's going to be remote. Most of corporate America is moving away from remote right now. So it's getting harder and harder because, it's kind of like trying to get an assignment in Hawaii, right? Like everybody's trying to get an assignment in Hawaii, where nobody wants an assignment in New York State, so like if you want to go to New York State, you probably don't have that much competition, but if you want to go to Hawaii, you're competing with everybody.
And the main reason I bring that up, I was going to say the main reason I bring that up is because, after the military mindset, you've done what you have to do. You should be able to want to do what you want to do. And having that flexibility a lot of times kind of makes that decision for me. Because I know I want to coach when I get out. So I actually have a coaching gig already, but it's after working hours,
Yeah.
And they don't really pay a lot of anything, but it's something I want to do, and just finding a job that has that flexibility where I can still drop the kids off to school and then still go to school for myself and still make money and, not really be hurting financially, but still bring in a little extra cash, that type of thing, but still do what you love. It's just a appetizing mindset to have,
I hear you. I empathize with it totally. I'd take 100% remote job tomorrow if it paid the right amount, don't get it twisted, but we also have to live in the real world too, so, and that's obviously that is dependent upon what career field or industry you're trying to break into. Like some industries, like more cyber, there may be more remote roles available, but if you're more into like, another industry, there might not be any. You can't expect, well, not that you are, but like folks transitioning out can't expect that just because their buddy in the next office over, when he got out, got a remote job, that we're going to be able to get a remote job or vice versa. Right. So, I wouldn't say not to target it. Absolutely. If that's what you want to do, then keep looking, but you might end up having to settle for something more hybrid, you know, because depending on what's available.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're running up against the
majority of my
clock. So
buddies.
we're up
Okay.
against the
But,
clock, so I want to get the last question in from Rich if we could. Could you go ahead, Rich?
Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, I just make it quick. Another recruiter was on the site and he mentioned to the students, he said, look, before you go into an interview or talk about salaries, know your worth. You need to know what you're worth.
Yeah.
So go on ChatGPT, go to AI, put your resume in there, and no one's smarter than AI. So AI will tell you based on your experience, based on your search, blah, 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 you're worth this much money, or this is whatever. So I'm just wondering if someone goes into a job interview and let's just say AI or ChatGPT says you're worth 100 grand a year and they offer you 50 grand a year. Is it acceptable for the applicant to say, well, I think I'm worth more than that? And then if they ask you, well, why do you think that? And you say, because I went on ChatGPT and that's what they told me. I mean, it seems like a silly conversation, but do recruiters use it?
Well, not ChatGPT, not for that. We do have sites that we use in HR. One of them is Glassdoor. There are a couple others that are only used by HR. You won't see them as an applicant, but they do follow national trends. They do it by zip code as well. So that's why a lot of bigger companies that are national, they have zones. And depending on what zone you live in, that's how they structure their salaries. So the difference between living in like New York City and like Florida, for example, you're not the same job. Somebody doing the exact same job in Florida is not going to get paid the exact same as somebody in downtown New York City, right? Because of cost of living adjustment. But with that being said, like I use Glassdoor personally myself. But the thing is, going back to what I was talking about with the bullet writing, there are folks, not that I'm saying anybody in here does it, but there are folks that overinflate their experience. And then when we actually get to the nuts and bolts of what your actual real experience is, it's not the same. So I'll have folks be like, well, I did 25 years in the military. I have 25 years of experience doing this, this, and this. And then when we actually sit and break it down based on what's in the job description, come to find out, no, only 5 of those 25 years you did in the military were relevant to the position that you're applying to. So when you're in Glassdoor, if everything that you're looking at for salary and salary average is based on 20 plus years of experience and not 5, it's going to kick you a completely different number, on what that realistic salary range that you're looking at should be. So you might, 20 plus years experience. For example, let's use me as a chief of staff. I've only been a chief of staff for a year. If I was a chief of staff for 10 years and I go on Glassdoor, that salary range is going to be completely different than what a 1-year experience is going to be. So when we're looking at our military experience, we have to really, no kidding, get into that and really refine that down. It's like even in air transportation, I was in air trans for 9 years, but I didn't do fleet service for 9 years. I didn't do ATOC for 9 years. I didn't do ramp for 9 years. I did ramp for like 2, ATOC for like 3, fleet for like 1, and so depending on what the job description breakdown is looking for, I have 9 years experience total in air transportation, but if the job description is looking for fleet, I only had a year in fleet. That's like, no kidding, hands-on, so like that's going to sway that figure. So we just got to be honest with ourselves when we're looking at those calculations. It's very easy to use ChatGPT and just kick out a number. But like, are you really doing the work of really refining that number down? And like, do you, no kidding, have that many years, no kidding, hands-on, doing that relevant stuff for every single thing in a job description? Like we got to be honest with ourselves too. I'm just throwing that out there, not that anybody's doing that, but.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Hey, Steve, it's been awesome having you here. I just want to be able to get, do you have any closing thoughts or anything you'd like to share that we didn't cover here before I let you get back to work?
No, man, I actually have, I got to jump into a meeting here in like 3 minutes, but it was a pleasure to be here, Jordy. I'd be in earnest. It's good to see you too, sir. but you know, I'd be more than welcome to come back again if you guys are interested
Absolutely.
in that. But really appreciate the questions too. Like, this is what you guys need to be doing. Ask the hard questions. Just because I answered them doesn't mean you have to like my answer either. Like, go out and find somebody else. Go find other people. Get different points of views. Like, there's tons of people out there that can give you all different sides of the coin. Use what you can.
That's awesome. Hey, Steve Weston of Verizon. Well, thank you very much for taking the time. I'll definitely reach out and try to get you back on again here down the road as we rotate people through the academy. Thank you very much, sir. We'll be back here in about 3 minutes with Reed Woody, and we'll see you guys soon.